An action-packed Victorian high country trip. After 100mm of rain, tracks turning impassable, we decide to take on the tracks we were told not to do. Join us in this epic episode where you'll see the high country and mountains in a state not often ventured through before. I'll be with my mate Matt testing out his new 2021 Isuzu D-Max and myself in my 2010 Isuzu D-Max with over 330,000 kilometres to it. We come across high rivers, familiar iconic destinations. We got all their stuff there. Got a bloody tourist campground, mate. And then take on more than we can chew, becoming stuck for over an hour on a 1 kilometre track deep into the Victorian high country. With lots of winching, wet boggy ruts and things going wrong. I'm bogged! I'm bogged!
I think this is the biggest winch I've ever done. Winch going and voltage drops down to 10.5.
Stick around for one of the best adventures you'll be a part of. Enjoy. Yeah, guys, if you are enjoying the content, flick us a subscribe. We are creating videos every 2 weeks for you guys to watch. Plus, we have discount codes at some of the biggest companies around Australia, including iTech World, Undercover Australia, Salty Captain, using the discount code Always Touring, and even our own quality merch for you guys to wear when you are out. We start this adventure in probably one of the biggest towns right at the doorstep of the Victorian high country, known as Mansfield, around 50 kilometres from the turnoff to Buttercup Road. We'll be entering the mountains from and airing down. The vehicles that we have in this episode, I've got my 2010 Isuzu D-Max. It has just rolled over to 330,000 kilometres. I've got no lockers, I've got the LSD in the rear. I have kept it a bit lighter for this trip, so I'm not carrying as much water and fuel as I normally would. And then Matt is in his new 2021 D-Max, which it has 33-inch tyres and it's got rear diff lockers. Rightio, welcome to another episode, guys. This one's going to be a bit of a bonus episode. We have made our way into the Victorian high country. I'm here with one of my mates, Matt, aka Wombat. Wait, do you want to tell the camera why your name's Wombat?
It's more for my stature.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the reputation, which I don't have. It's just the build. Little wombat claws here.
Give us your best Wombat impression. Plan for the episode is we are heading in the west side of the Victorian high country, making our way up to Craig's Hut, exploring the Kin Basin Road. Heaps of river crossings. It's been really wet lately. We've just had 50mm of rain in the last 48 hours with approximately 25mm more to come, which is going to make the tracks bloody wet. So there could be some winching and some good fun. And then we're making our way more into the central area of the high country, heading over to Dargo, checking out the Crooked River to see if it's passable. It's currently sitting at 1.8 metres, which if you've seen before in some of my episodes, I've hit it at 1.8 metres and almost drowned a bloody car. What do you reckon your top 3 things that you love about the high country, you reckon?
I think number one's got to be the story of it. So from, you know, all the cattlemen, the Man from Snow River kind of vibe, that's got to be the number one. The majesty of it. I mean, it's a beautiful area, and the variability. So you go in summer, it's scorching hot, then in winter you can be camping in the snow.
Couldn't agree more with Matt on that one. Anyone that comes up to the Victorian high country gets this immense feeling of excitement and fascination. But let's crack into the excitement part of this adventure by making our way up to Tomahawk Hut and starting our ascent up into the mountains. So after turning off Buttercup Road and making our way along Carter's Road, what we have done is we have made our way right up a track called Number 3 Track. The views, we've just made our way to the top and the views would be absolutely incredible, hey. But there's so much fog and I think it like really adds to the atmosphere sort of to the start of this Victorian high country trip. Tracks so far have been wet, not too slippery, heaps of traction. The rocks are good. We're down to 25 PSI and we're making our way over to the King Basin Road. See if we can hit some of those river crossings. With the fog settling hard, a couple more iconic huts being checked out, it was safe to say whilst the visibility was not fantastic, the atmosphere was something like no other.
These are the sort of views I'm talking about that would be like absolutely unreal right now. You know, one of the most iconic things here in the Victorian High Country I find is when you do these steep climbs, particularly when you're going up spur tracks, is when you get to the top, the views that look over the entire Victorian High Country. And it's just something you can't match anywhere else in Australia. You know, you go all the way up to the Kimberley, the Pilbaras, Cape Yorks, even down in South Australia, and there's just nowhere else in Australia when you're touring that you get places like this. It is what makes the Victorian High Country one of the most iconic places. Bloody unreal, mate.
Now this is where unknowingly the excitement and real four-wheel drive adventure begins, and we really start to see why taking on the Victorian High Country in the wet can change easy green track conditions into black and almost impassable tracks.
Rightio, so we have rocked up to lunch at one of my most favourite places here in the Victorian High Country, one of my favourite campsites right on the river known as Pineapple Flat. We've turned off King Basin Road, we just went across the river crossing, and we'll be heading back out onto King Basin Road and taking the back way around to Craig's Hut, as I've never sort of done that back area there to see all the different sort of little river crossings that you can do and take more of a scenic route. But the weather so far, the rain has stayed away, the fog has cleared up, and we're starting to see patches of blue sky, so it's absolutely unreal. Maddie's not here, obviously, as I told you before, so I've had to make my own bloody toasties, and the chicken I bought, out of date, forgot the cheese to put on it, and yeah, I'm bloody useless in the kitchen.
Now, just some information as to why the track conditions change so quickly in the wet. It's because up here in Victoria and New South Wales, the mountains have big sections of clay that underline the superficial surface of the dirt and mud. So once a bit of water or layers break, the car literally can become uncontrollable if you lose traction, which we like to refer it as to becoming passenger whilst the car basically drives itself.
So just a quick visualization as to how much water has been up here in the high country the last 24 hours. Any track that we're heading up at the moment on the King Basin Road is just slushy mud clay that you just completely lose control. As soon as you hit a corner or you start going up something where there's wet clay ruts, it's actually pretty sticky. Wasn't able to get out the camera before, but I just wanted to quickly show you what we've been going through.
Well, as you can see, this is where the rest of the episode just ends up like this.
Are you going for it? Well, that seems to be the only track in and out of here. One thing about wheeling with mates is you fall into peer pressure, and Wombat has just found a cheeky little few bog holes along the side of the road that we're calling the bonus lines. He went, had a good time, and then has convinced me to do it, so let's give it a crack, eh? Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And along that sidetrack, it was time to get back along the King Basin Road, which is basically always a two-wheel drive access. But as we said, the track conditions can change so quickly with over the 100 millimeters of rain that we've been having, and start hitting some pretty deep water crossings along the way.
Is it a big crossing? Are you going to drive it?
Yeah, I'll do it. Challenge accepted.
I'll make Billy in the Ranger. He's come through here.
Yeah, right.
If you stand over here, you can see it
Goes all the way down.
goes for like what, 80 metres or something?
It's just a question whether it's deep or not. It's not so much like a thingo.
For me to just drive it slow then.
If you want, I reckon it should. It looks like a rocky base.
Now, Natalie's all the way from the United Kingdom, and this is her first exposure to this part of Australia, so I thought I would give her the drive of some parts of these tracks just for the fun of it. The only true track conditions that I can genuinely say that I dislike terrain-wise is large boulders and rocks, especially when you're driving along them or you can't see them in river crossings, because of the potential damage that it can do to the underbody of your car, hitting any of your transmission or your driveline or anything like that. That's why I am so, I don't know the correct terminology, but anal, I guess I would say, as to why I always walk river crossings before I do them. River crossing after river crossing, wet, muddy tracks. I tell you what, this is something that I'm absolutely loving on this trip so far, that you really don't get too often, and given over the next 4 or 5 years that are coming up, we're probably going to have some pretty dry seasons. So this is probably one of the very few last opportunities that I'm going to be able to have where we're going to be seeing tracks like this.
Alright, so just went and walked out one of the river crossings, which I would say is very close to what we are going to experience on the Crooked River.
That's called a dip breaker. That is.
This one's pretty deep. Just saw Matt do that then. Second gear low. Let's see how we go. So we're just coming through the end of the King Basin Road, and all the rivers are like so much fun. Hey, none of them are stupid depth, but there's a lot of big puddles, nice little rocky sections, and it's a fair bit of fun. But as you can see here, there's a really good base on all of them. Very rocky, lots of traction, no dramas. The flow's high, but we've had nothing higher than our spotlights in the front.
Finishing up on Basin Track, which I highly recommend, we turn back onto Circuit Road and make the ascent up to Craig's Hut.
The movies, The Man from Snowy River.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was actually used as a real fair income thing, but
It's definitely like the most iconic hut here in the Victorian High Country. If you're making your way up and you're exploring, this is definitely the one that you add to your list of things to do. The track up was pretty easy compared to the track that we were doing down King Basin's Road? That's what it was? Yeah. That was really clay. This one, there was a bit of soil, but it had heaps of traction coming up. And we've seen an all-wheel drive up here. And people are doing a bike ride from Canberra to Melbourne via the Victorian High Country, and we're seeing them staying up here as well.
the Hunt 1000 they call it.
The Hunt 1000.
That's pretty sure that's what he said, yeah.
You wouldn't catch me doing that.
But also, when you're staying there, don't leave your shit everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, everyone, I'll show you. I'll quickly show you, actually. I'm not about it. You guys let me know what you think.
We got all their stuff there. Look at that. It's like a bloody tourist campground, mate. After leaving Craig's Hut, we made our way back down to Circuit Road via a track known as Monument Track. We spoke to some local tour guides who said there was a steep section with some traction loss, which makes you feel a bit like a passenger, as we were speaking about before, with the wet clay and losing traction. If you're looking for a different way up or down to Craig's Hut, we highly recommend this route. It's considered a blue track on new tracks.
So we have just finished the Monument Track, a lot steeper than I thought it was going to be, right towards the bottom. It was definitely interesting in two places there. I wasn't able to get it on film 100% because, you know, it's like when you're doing, 500-600 meters of steep descent. It's a bit hard to get out of the car and film it all, but definitely a blue track, nothing too difficult if it were to be dry. We spoke to one of the guides and they said that they had one car that struggled to get up there a little bit. So we're making our way down to the Upper Howitt campground, and at the moment we are just at Bindari Falls and checking that out on the way. This has got to be in my top 5 waterfalls around Australia. You've got to add this one to your list when you come to the high country. The serenity of the green ferns underneath the waterfall. It's always flowing all year round. I've never seen it when there's no water. It's bloody cool. So we have just currently found like a little bonus line. Oh, that's slipping around. Bonus line around the outside of one of the tracks that we're just going through a couple of bog holes, and obviously this track has not been driven in a while. We've come up to some pretty gnarly third bog hole for the day.
I know time is a valuable thing. Watch it fly by as the pendulum swings. Watch it count down to the end of the day. The clock takes life away. So unreal.
Now, going into these bog holes were pretty funny because we actually didn't walk these and Wombat just hit them straight on. So going into them, we really had no idea how deep they were or what the off-camber was.
Alright, so we've just come up to the next sort of bog hole. This one I'm going to go second gear, low range. Matt just had a go, didn't really get bogged, like he had to give it a fair bit, but now he's sort of stirred up that top soil that's underneath the mud because it's quite slippery. There's a genuine chance that I have, potentially get bogged here. So I've set up the snap strap around the top. I've already got it connected to the soft shackle, try and reduce how much metal there is when you do a pull. And then we've got him on the other side. He's reversed his car down just in case. Let's go. Yeah, mate, good to go. Righto, I'm bogged. That's me, Boggs, but I don't think there's any water coming in from the side. Yeah, perfect. So I don't reckon we're gonna have to pull too hard. I reckon it'll just be like, I'm gonna give it some while you give it, like, just pull me.
Well, even after poor Matt had even straddled on my car and went through the mud, I decided to have a little bit of a crack of getting out before he hooked me up fully to the snap strap.
Didn't even need the snatch in the end, I just gave it a second crack.
More entertaining to get your sacked out.
Sorry. I was like, I'll just give it a crack to see what my pressures are when I go to get pulled. And I was like, oh, hang on, I'm getting some good here. Rightio, so line number 2, we're going to have a crack up one of these hills. It's really slippery clay. No risk of rolling the car, going off camber, but it's bloody wet and bloody steep. You're losing a heap of front traction on your front right wheel. It's just spinning.
Yeah, right. I'm trying to go left to get that shavy stuff.
This will be a red hot crack if you get it. Like the fact you're struggling this low already.
Yeah, I'm already. I was surprised I couldn't even make it up just past where I started. Rightio, try again.
Right up. Yeah, it's just no traction spinning.
Yeah, it's in low range. I'm just I'm leaving in first in manual. Just locked on.
Does the locker turn off when you hit a certain foot point maybe? Because it's electronic locker, isn't it? We'll go up and I'll be able to see from the back if both wheels are, when it disengages and engages.
Yeah, it's just got to all the lights are on the dash saying traction controls off, lane keep assist is off, which is handy on this terrain.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, I mean, if you really want to give it a crack, you can go down to like 12 PSI.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought it'd make much difference considering, look, there's not even any tread where I've been spinning, like you can't get me.
Well, let me have a look at the back here.
We decided to let that one be and have a crack at the next biggest obstacle that faces us ahead. Well, we didn't get far on that one, and as you can see here when Natalie falls, that there is just no traction on this clay. And whilst lowering tyre pressures was definitely on my mind to gain more traction, so was losing height, and we needed all the clearance we could get as we were diffing out on the dirt. And given the biggest topic in Australia at the moment is getting defected for any mods on your four-wheel drive, it would have been bloody handy to have an extra inch in the tyres or suspension.
Right, so plan of attack for this one, we currently have the car, we've got it stuck, it's bellied out on the bottom of the rut. So we found a nice big dead tree at the end of the track. It's like, when I say dead, it's like 50% dead, so it shouldn't pull out, big roots. Tree hugger on, we've got the winch out, we're going to hook it up by a soft shackle, and we're going to do a slow drive and a slow winch at the same time and see how it goes. Alright, stop there.
Well, it's safe to say that was a pretty big winch, and you can really just tell how smooth the ruts were and how little traction there was. I was bloody keen to give this a crack.
Second gear, low range. Actually, I might go first gear, low range. I don't want to snap anything. I'm bogged! Another bad thing is mine doesn't have an auto spool, so I've got to pull it out for him. Rightio, so plan of attack for this one after seeing that whole conundrum. Obviously getting bellied out, really slippery conditions. So I've got my winch out, ready to go. I've got it connected to, so we've got the tree hugger connected to the Shoff Sackle. Interesting one though, I've had to turn down both my DC chargers right down to pulling only 5 amps, because as you know, I've got it set to 50 amps because we've got the big batteries. Which means it's drawing it down to 12 volts. So I'm just sitting still, 12.3 when I've got the alternator running. Because we've got the winch going, that has a really high amp draw. I can't remember how much, but it'd have to be over 50 amps. So we just want to make sure that we have as much power to everything whilst we drive. It's pretty easy drive, but we just need the winch to force out while we bottom out. Let's give this a crack, eh? Like it's pulling me my battery down to like 11.3, eh?
That's less than ideal.
Just gonna rev it to get the alternator kicked in.
Well, less than ideal having to constantly rev it just to be able to keep the alternator keeping up to date, but as well as always thinking about safety.
How hard is your thing to get to put the little halfway thing on? Just because I've had this for 3 years, I don't know what the metal's like. Just doing the 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off thing with the winch. This is the biggest winch I've ever done. This is wild. I'm just doing 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. Winches actually take so bloody long. Yeah, when I put the bloody winch going, my voltage dropped down to 10.5, which is fine. It's just flashing at me. Made it up. How good's that? Bog hole again, plus a good 35-minute winch.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like after that big effort all day, doing the full driving, the winching and getting bogged, it was definitely time to make our way to camp. And where we ended up going was a little campground just past Bindari called the Upper Howka camping area. It wasn't exactly at this camping area, but it was about 10 kilometres down the dirt path just on the edge of the Alpine National Park, where we ended up setting up all of our stuff, having a good night in, and enjoy the sunlight whilst we could, because we didn't realise how much rain there was going to be overnight and into tomorrow to create another yet epic day on the tracks in the Victorian High Country.
Alrighty, so that brings us to the end of day one up here in the Victorian High Country. I tell you what, the rain has gone away, the sun has come out. We've just come from Bindari Falls and we've made our way out to the Upper Howkett campground, I believe it's called. And we've actually found a little offshoot along the river and got our own little spot. There seems to be a lot of people in and about for a Tuesday, which is bloody weird. But recap for the day, actually had a pretty good day. We had a lot of fun doing the full driving, lots of river crossings and making our way through that west part of the Victorian High Country. Plan for tomorrow, we'll be heading our way to Dargo and exploring more that central to the southern end and hopefully get stuck into some more four-wheel driving.
Does this come with the package when you turn 40, mate?
Fuck yeah.
Freaking rocking chair.
If you're not rocking at camp, you're not camping. This is living.
Well, this morning we've woken up to like 35 mil of rain overnight. There were huge thunderstorms and the tracks look absolutely wet as a dog. But given how much rain we've had overnight and it's still raining, we think that some of those tracks are going to be pretty much impassable. So we're going to have to come up with a different plan to get around to Dargo, or if we get around to the Crooked River, because the Crooked River at the moment is sitting at like 1.9 meters, which is probably also impassable. Well, nothing like a slow pack down when it is absolutely bucketing down, but as I said before, it is absolutely pertinent that you are able to be flexible when you come up into the high country. So we made some plans and we decided to get back on the tracks.
So, plan of attack this morning, we are no longer heading over to Dargo and the Crooked River. It's going to take us about 5 or 6 hours to get over there, with the possibility, as I said before, the Crooked River track being impassable. So what we've done is we're actually going to stay around this area, make our way up to the Bluff track, make our way to Bluff Hut. I believe it's called Lovick's Hut, some of the more iconic huts in the area. And then making our way around King Billiard and up to Sheep Yards Flat. It's extremely wet. It has not stopped raining. The tracks so far are extremely clay, so we could be in for an interesting day.
Well, the rain was bloody heavy. The wind was definitely out and about. I reckon it was sitting around 60 km/h winds. It was freezing at around 8 degrees. I tell you what, I was bloody happy to be inside the full drive as we're going through all this mud to stay nice and warm. But we made our way up to Bluff Hut along the massive ascent up. Something that I forgot to add in there and tell you guys, we'd actually been seeing these huge groups of school kids that seem to be doing this Duke of Ed hikes through the Victorian High Country. We've seen them at least through 70 kilometres of the mountains, and all I could be thinking about the whole time,
Very, very wet.
so huge props to them to be able to stay out and be actually what we think they look like. They're enjoying the windy, wet conditions.
Alright, so we are just halfway along Bluff track at the moment, and I tell you what, the terrain, it's bloody changing. It's so wet up top here, and there's a lot of little rock steps and clay sections that are making it pretty fun going up and down these mountains. But like the fog, the rain, it's all just adding to the atmosphere of like what the Victorian High Country is really about. Bloody loving it. All right, so we have just pulled up about 3/4 away along the bluff track, and we are at Lovick's hut, which is probably one of the most famous huts up here other than Craig's hut, in my opinion. The track so far has been like pretty good for how wet it is. We've had a fair bit of traction, but there's been a couple fun spots through the puddles and a couple like small rocky sections and ruts and stuff like that. But like, as I keep saying, like the atmosphere here with the mist and the weather, it just really adds to it. Now for lunch, I'm having ravioli. So I had leftovers from the other night. As you know, Maddie's not here, so I'm doing all the cooking. So it's very basic. I've got packet ravioli with leftover pasta sauce. I've got some garlic here, so that's pretty posh, I think. Garlic crusher, and treating myself to some bloody coconut water. Plans for the rest of the day, we're going to finish this track. We're taking our way over to the Sheep's Yards Flats, I think it's called, and a couple of the roads along there, and basically just keep adventuring through the high country.
As we make our way to the tops of these mountains, despite the lack of views because of the amount of rain and fog that has been going on non-stop since midnight last night, the tracks, I actually are finding that we have a lot of traction, despite, as you can see here, the really smooth rocks as we're going up the ascents. We're not losing any traction at all, and the mud itself doesn't seem to have a clay bottom. So as we make our way back down the descent, I just can't help myself with the absolutely amazing atmosphere that the Victorian high country is creating. Check this out, listen to the music, and enjoy it for yourself. With some spectacular views along the way, we sort of got sick and tired of driving along the typical touring tracks through this part of the high country, and we wanted to find a couple black runs, so we decided to turn off the track towards the Upper Jamison Hut campsite, where we run into some dramas. What do you reckon? So we have just made our way up to the Upper Jamison Hut. As you guys know, there's been heaps of rain. So we're just walking across the crossing before we hit this, because this is definitely the deepest, hardest flying one we've hit so far.
I'm not fussed. I guess the only other thing to think about is, with all the rain we've had, us getting out tomorrow.
Yeah, it shouldn't get like worse.
It should.
It should.
All right. Wouldn't be much worse, but
I'm happy to do it, but if you go to the spot.
After half an hour of umming and ahhing about doing the crossing, we have said no to it. 800 mil high, and we've had about 75 mil worth of rain the last 48 hours, and it's pumping bloody hard. And we're towards the end of the trip. We've decided not to do it. It's pretty shitty feeling driving away from saying no to something, especially when you're 50-50 on it. It's not impassable, but definitely a risk. Alright, so we have just made our way to such an amazing spot for the camp for this night. So we're staying at a place called the New Hands Flat, which is right along the river. We've got it right there in the background, on the way to Sheepyards Flat, where we were originally going to stay tonight. We've come across this one. So bloody nice. So we've got D-Max parked here. We're going to pop the rooftop tent for the night. Matt and Nat, they're going to be getting up their gazebo and swags and setting up there. Plan is to have the fire pit there with the river in the background, wake up in the morning, looking at the views. Little bit disappointed, still on my mind about not doing that river crossing, but it's one of those things where, you know, sometimes it's 50-50, and it's always better to be safer than sorry.